Hi, everyone. My name is Bill Plevin, and I'm the professor for the history of anti-Semitism at Gratz College. It's wonderful to have you in class, and I look forward to meeting you through the forum, getting to know you in other ways, perhaps by email communication or phone or Zoom, when we get a chance to talk about your paper projects for the end of the semester. I use he/him pronouns. And a little bit about myself. I am a graduate of the Rabbinical School of the Jewish Theological Seminary. I also have a PhD from Princeton, where I studied modern Jewish thought. I wrote my dissertation on Martin Buber, and I'm continuing to work on a book on Buber's philosophy. I would like to get to know you a little bit better, so I'm going to ask you to send me an email telling me what program you're in, what research interests you have. If you're doing work besides being in this program at this point, that would be good to know. And just something about your educational background. And also, please let me know your preferred pronouns as well. Also, let me know if you live in a time zone other than the Eastern time zone. That'll be just helpful for me to know, even though there's no official required real-time component to the class. I'd just like to know kind of your situation in general. Okay, I'd like to speak briefly in this video about some of the assignments for the class and then to review some of the goals for the class. The weekly forum is, of course, a major part of the class, as it is with the Gratz online classes. I look forward to your postings every week and will respond regularly to them. Keep in mind that the key thing I'm looking for in a lot of these posts is relevance. So I'm happy for you to bring in outside ideas and experiences and knowledge, but it's important that they be relevant to the question and to the weekly reading. I do expect that the first post will be a little bit more polished as a piece of writing than the response posts or the first two original posts. I go over all of the requirements, both in terms of what I'm expecting to see from the posts and also the timing of the posts in the syllabus. So take a careful look at all of that there to understand what I'm looking for. There is a short paper, a long paper, and then a take-home test. The first paper is short, and it's a response to the writing to the article by David Engel. I'll say a little bit more about that when I talk about the goals for the course. But basically, the main thing there is that it's not crucial that you completely agree or completely disagree with Engel, but I want you to engage in a critical reflection on his argument about use of the term anti-Semitism. The second paper is a longer paper, but it's not a research paper. It's also more of a critical reflection. I'm going to ask you to look at one article or book chapter on something on anti-Semitism to engage in a critical reflection on the author's categorizations of anti-Semitism, their historiography, their methodology. How are they looking at anti-Semitism as a historical phenomenon? How do they understand anti-Semitism as a historical phenomenon? And again, I'll say a little bit more about that when we get to the goals for the class. The one thing about the second paper is that it should not be about the Nazi period or about the Holocaust. I know a lot of you are in the Holocaust and Genocide Studies program and do a lot of work on that, so I'm asking you to do something from outside of that time period. And finally, there's that take-home test, which is on, I believe, the first 5 weeks of the class, and that'll be available on February 14th for you to start to work on, and then is due on the 23rd of February. Now I will move on to, I'll just say about the test that it's a number of questions and you'll have some choice. So I think it's 5 out of 9 questions. This is a class on the history of anti-Semitism with an emphasis on the modern period. So I want to talk about some of the goals for the class. So some of the goals are about understanding history, about understanding the various factors that have led to the hatred of Jews, to anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism in a variety of historical contexts, to understand the complex factors with associated with the rise of anti-Semitism in these contexts, whether they be political, economic, cultural, or religious factors. And also to be aware about how anti-Semitism changes and develops from one time and place to another, but also to be aware of continuity. So sometimes there are aspects of anti-Semitism that are different in one historical time period as compared to another, but sometimes there'll be continuity, and it'll be helpful to recognize where there's change and where there's continuity. For example, I would say, especially with the Holocaust, not every manifestation of anti-Semitism looks like the Nazi period or the Holocaust, or like blood libels in medieval Christianity. But there may be other forms of anti-Semitism and that look very different than that. And to be able to recognize that as historians, and to be able to weave a historical narrative around those different forms of anti-Semitism requires some attention to what we mean by anti-Semitism, which brings us to the next set of goals, which is really to understand the historiography of anti-Semitism, meaning how do we write history? How do we weave a historical narrative? How are historians interpreting the data that they look at? What exactly do they mean by anti-Semitism? Is anti-Semitism a cause for historical events? Is anti-Semitism caused by historical events? And if so, which ones? What ideas, actions, policies, or attitudes are categorized as anti-Semitic? What choices are historians making when they construct their historical narratives about anti-Semitism? What decisions are they making about the way they understand how anti-Semitism works, and how it works in different times in different places? Where is there anti-Semitism? Where isn't there? This is less for the question of deciding in our own moment, our own time and place, what anti-Semitism is and what we might want to do about it, although it's relevant, I would say, but it's really more about how we construct historical narratives, how historians write history, and being attentive to the way in which anti-Semitism is a factor in history, but realizing that different historians may categorize different things as anti-Semitism, or that anti-Semitism may simply be manifested in different ways in different times and places, which is why I want us to pay a lot of attention to this question in Engel, which is why I'm having you write that paper. And then the final paper, again, is not really a research paper, but is a critical reflection on one historian's work through one article or one book chapter. And the other thing I should just say here as a final word about the goals for the class is that we are looking at historians who try to explain the manifestations of anti-Semitism throughout history, and that in looking for explanations, we might say that we're looking for reasons, but looking for reasons is not the same thing as looking for good reasons. So that in looking for explanations and looking to understand the motivations of various historical figures, we're not saying that we are sympathetic to them necessarily if their actions manifest anti-Semitism or some other kind of hatred. And that's important to understand, that when we try to place the subjects of history, the subjects that we study, when we try to place them in their historical context and explain them, we may not be engaged in direct moral judgment. We may leave direct moral judgment to the side, at least for the moment. But it's important to understand that in offering understandings and explanations, we're not necessarily offering a justification or any kind of sympathy for those historical events. And that's important to understand when we read the historians that we read, that they're not doing that either. So I look forward to learning with you. I hope this was a helpful introduction. Every week there'll be a written up lecture that should guide you through the readings, and you read through that and do the readings. And also there are a number of online videos with a variety of connected to a variety of topics, and something about that will appear in the reading as well. in the lectures as well. Something about the videos will appear in my weekly lectures as well. And also, I'm having you watch the movie Denial in one of the weeks of the course. This is the story of Deborah Lipstat's and the trial about Holocaust denial in England. If you have any trouble accessing the movie, just be in touch with me. Make sure you all have some way of accessing the movie. But if you have some trouble accessing it, let me know. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.